Things are great. Yeah,
Good.
everything's good. I've been writing a ton of books. Obviously tech powered sales came out in 2021 now, and that's
Hmm.
5 years ago. And I've had my consultancy for 6 years, and I've been traveling the world, Dubai, Italy, Venice, and now Switzerland. I'm from Los Angeles originally, but half my
Yeah.
family is from East Lansing, like Detroit area.
Hmm.
So got Michigander roots.
Yeah.
But then, tech powered sales, Aaron Ross read it and he goes, it's like a defense contractor manual, right? It's like glossary, 50 acronyms. What's funny though is RevOps now is crazy technical. These kids are on Clay and they're vibe coding, and it just feels like my little brother's a coder. It feels like something that is no longer strategic, right?
Mm.
So I made an effort to make my books from that point forward much simpler, in what they call the Flesh Kincaid score. Donald Trump, fifth grade reading level. But Einstein says make it simple, but not too simple. It's actually really hard. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, just to make manuals that are useful, right? And that stand the test of time. Because the other problem in putting in all this tech stack stuff into books you're writing is that it decays.
Right.
Like you put the vendor names and those vendors are acquired or M&A or out of business. So I have this Justin Michael series, Justin Michael method 1 through 7 at this point. And
Hmm.
yeah, I've literally written like 7 books in the past 3 years on this independent publisher. I was on Wiley and Harper, and this guy, Jeremy Jones. He's the number one publisher in Arizona.
Hmm.
So yeah, but they're great little manuals. And this new book is called The Frame. And the idea was sort of like frame psychology, or in Claff meets 48 laws of power. Essentially, as a human, there's certain experiences, whether it's your driver's test at 16, or it's your first public speaking, or it's a date, or it's fundraising. There's these hair trigger moments where microseconds count. How do you prep for it? If you start to slip, how do you regain composure?
Yeah.
I used to do music, and once got to go on stage with Kenny Loggins from the Danger
Hmm.
Zone. Like his son and I had a band, and Kenny said to me, if you miss a note, just hold it off key and go to the next one.
Hmm.
Don't show the audience that you made the mistake. And I know because you've done hundreds of podcasts, and I've done that too. But a lot of the young people, millennials, Gen Z, they haven't done a lot of cold calling. They haven't been a lot of intense negotiations. I mean, when I was 31, I worked at Salesforce, and I had no clue what to do on a phone with a CMO and like, a marketing team. Todd Capone was actually my trainer back then
Hmm.
to go through that boot camp. So yeah, this frame book is a good topic today, and I've had glowing reviews. I mean, I spent like 100 hours editing the thing. I co-wrote it with a collaborator, Johnny Staker, out in England, who's been able to pull up some like $100,000 months, and he exited some companies when he was younger. So we have sort of an M&A fundraising side, and
Sure.
then our side of the thing, which is 20 years in sales.
Well, I think it's interesting because I read Tech Powered Sales. I remember several years ago, and I remember thinking, this is way over my head. This is way over my head and over the head of most of my clients. And I don't work with a lot of companies in high tech specifically. And so I remember thinking, okay, this sounds really sharp. This is probably the future for some, you know, some industries or some areas of the industry rather. And I've seen a lot of your stuff come through, and it's all very sales focused, all very tech focused. There's a lot of meat to that stuff. What attracted me to the frame and what made me think, wow, this is different. And in our message exchange before we recorded this, I said, this is a little departure for you. And and maybe it isn't, but it seemed like it's me. When I'm working with teams now, I'm highlighting where their top performers act and do differently than the average performers, than the new reps on the team. And one of the things that I suspect, which is really hard to test for, it's really you witness it and you either recognize it or you don't, is gravitas. It's executive presence. It
Oh
is
yeah.
the little subtle things, and that's what that's what it feels like you're getting at here with framing and psychology, and those are so important in sales. They're very important in in-person sales. I believe they're even more important when you're selling through a screen because you
Hmm.
still need to transmit that energy, but it's much harder when you're the only one in the room. Why did you What was it about this concept that made you say, yeah, look, this is, I got to write about this?
Yeah, so it manifested this way. So first, it's true that there's really not a book on dating and sales. So there's a sort of encoding because that's a high pressure moment where you get in front of someone and they reject you. We've all been through it.
Hmm.
Um, but that then equated to fundraising moments where your pitch gets rejected. And it really equates to doing 6 and 7 figure deals, complex selling, even transactional selling, even on a car lot where you got high hopes and then, you people please or you run that wrong, right? You bring a low frame and you kind of blow the deal and you feel it. You feel the oxygen leave the room. You see the expression of the rejection, right? Casey has struck out at bat. We all
You're
know
giving
that
me
moment.
PTSD here, Justin. Come
Yeah,
on.
so I started the book with that. And one of the reasons, like I'm just wearing like you know, a basketball sweatshirt, but like Mark Cuban wears a t-shirt and he's a billionaire and he
Hmm.
has a strong frame. Frame, it's interesting. Frame is when you're in your true authentic self. It's at the highest level of your power, your confidence, your authenticity, but just being secure in your skin and, and leading the room. So I used to get into these deals at Salesforce where I fly in, go to the boardroom, had my blazer on, and sit down at the table, have my little notepad, and take notes. Well, then one manager's like, "Hey, this is business performance." So then I started standing at the front of the room very comfortably, whiteboarding things, calling people out on the room, really making it interactive. And it wasn't scary anymore. And they were just as scared as I was. And the thing they hated the most is you show up and just start wailing on slides. So actually, this hilarious thing I would do, I would get in front of the room, put the projector up. I'd say, "Okay, everyone, I have 60 slides," and I'd point and I'd just watch the terror, the mortified stares, and I'd be like, "Just kidding, we'll just do six, or I'll just do a Venn diagram." So humor can be a very strong frame because a lot of times when you get in front of people that are going to buy software from your solutions, right, you try to people please and you go in that customer service modality. So it takes courage to have frame. And obviously the frame collision concept came from Oren Klaff. Now, all this comes from this guy named Goffman, who was a sociologist who created a book in the 70s called Frame Control or something. So we're all kind of pulling from the shoulders of giants. I
Sure.
have 10 laws in the book, but if I just read them real quick, you're fully going to understand what
Hmm.
you're getting into. Is it okay if I go through some of those?
Please do.
So the first law is the law of non-neediness. Obvious, right? We talked about
Hmm.
non-hunger and combo prospecting. Second is the law of signal, and that's all about you radiate a frame before you even speak.
Hmm.
Third is the law of cold command. Fourth is the law of subtext. Five is the law of frame collision. Six is the law of qualification. Seven is the law of scarcity. Eight is the law of psychological sequence. Nine is the law of frame recovery. That's a fun one. 10 is the
Hmm.
law of embodied frame. So one way to think of it is like you get into a meeting and like they're a seven, you're a seven. So you go eight, they go eight, they go nine, you go eight. But we deal with a lot of high dominance people. So you go into a meeting or a cold call or a Zoom and they're on 10 and they're just controlling the call. And that's sort of the Aikido mode where you kind of let them be right or let them be powerful for a minute.
Hmm.
Because the bigger they are, the harder they fall. So this book has 12 chapters. Everyone starts with a vignette in a city. It has a really interesting, like James Bond, Jean Le Carre, like Billions, Succession vibe to it, almost
Hmm.
like film noir. And then it gets into like Robert Greene historical examples. And it's just really cinematic. It's short and extremely entertaining. And it just hammers this concept over and over again. And once you're through reading it, you look at your whole life differently. It changes your perspective. Like within chapters.
So, why is this the book that you needed to read, or not read, but why is this the book you needed to write now?
It's a great question. My father was a linguistics PhD. He was very well read when I was 10. I met Ray Bradbury at the Earthlink bookstore in Santa Barbara. I had a great love for science fiction. My first favorite book was Ender's Game, and I've met a lot of people in tech where that's the case. I actually worked for Sean Parker. I remember in the social network, he introduced Mark Zuckerberg to Peter Thiel. He used to send me checks from Philotic Inc., which was the Philotic Web. But I always wanted to do a book at the level of maybe a Nicholas Taleb, like Black Swan,
Hmm.
or Malcolm Gladwell, Ray Dalio. The inspirations for this book come from, Neil Strauss, The Game, Mark Manson, Models, um, all the amazing Robert Greene stuff is an inspiration. My dad was also a huge history buff. So, I mean, he didn't live, he passed away at 64, but I never thought I had a book that was good enough that I'd even show him. So this
Mm.
is sort of like diamond cut. Like we wrote it together and then we spent like probably 50 hours just on the editing. So the synthesis and edits, we even have like a Chekhov's gun in it, which is like these foreshadowing and backshadowing. It has a vibe to it, almost like a spy novel. It has like a noir vibe to the writing. So interesting because I wrote a book called Seven Figure Formula that was all satire. And my mentor, Tony Hughes, has a book called The Joshua Principle,
Hmm.
which is a story, like how Go Giver is a story. So I think what we're experimenting with in the era now is making a business book that's nonfiction, but has elements of fiction. It's kind of B2B going to B2C so
Sure.
that it's entertaining to consume because people really just don't read these days, And I think that what I'm doing here is ontology, the science of being, identity, and consciousness. Because if you put a client on a lie detector and they say, "Hey, Jeff, make me a seven-figure earner." So we put them on this polygraph. Okay, you're worth 200,000. You're earning 300,000, 400,000 lie, 500,000 lie, and it detects the identity. So we have to do something to shift ourselves into this higher frame, higher earning place in order to change our mindset and then our skill set. Because tactics alone, if you don't believe in yourself and you have head trash, you're not going to get there. So I
Yeah.
just like you, I've trained hundreds of sellers and sales teams, and mentality and positive thinking is not enough because in their heart of hearts, they just don't believe they can sell the sea levels, for example.
I saw something a friend of mine posted on Instagram, I think, on his story, and it was an old Jim Rohn interview. And he told the story about someone who told him, "Look, I want you to go and make $1 million. Not so you can make $1 million. I want you to give the money away, but I want you to go make $1 million so that you can become the person it takes to make that kind of money." And
Yeah.
that can be taken and misconstrued in a lot of different ways. I know some people who are very anti-salesperson, and so they would think that means something worse than it fundamentally does. But when you think about the transformation that you've gone through, I think about the transformation I've gone through. I think about the transformation I'm still going through to find myself closer to that person I am meant to be. There's a lot more to it than just picking up a book, by you or me or one of our mutual friends and saying, "Oh, here's a framework for cold calling," or, "Here's a framework to lay out my sales presentations." Like, it takes so much more than that. You have to be the person the kind of person who earns those results
Yeah.
in more so than just figuring out a plan to get the job done.
But yeah, it's like I should have the Surgeon General's warning on the book, right? Like, yeah, results may vary, like the Tipper Gore explicit lyrics on the Chronic by Dr. Dre. I mean, here's the thing, like all the success in life is on the other side of fear. There's only fear or love. So, like for you and I starting our own business, there are 500 million small businesses worldwide, but it's a huge leap of faith to leave corporate, start
Hmm.
your own training company, consulting company, do a book, be an author, build an album, do art, create, build a brand. Like it's a huge leap of faith. So, I was told that for 20 years when I worked for other people, and I spent, 20 years W-2 making tens of millions of dollars for other companies. So, the frame will get you into an element where you can maybe see the wall and see the cave that you fear to enter that has the
Hmm.
treasure. So the alchemist viewpoint or that Joseph Campbell thing. I love the Jim Rohn quote, which is interesting. Tony Robbins was actually personally mentored by
Yeah.
Jim Rohn, which is pretty cool. And he washed dishes in the bathtub and had no corporate experience. He built this out of thin air
Hmm.
because there's two ways to really change your life. I think one is probably therapy, and that's a broad word that could be philosophy, religion, it could be any type of self-help, but therapy before the age of seven is helpful. Coaching is really powerful. But another thing is just doing it, repetitions and getting in the field. Right. So I think there's a movie where like it was The Rock and Kevin Hart, and
Hmm.
they go to the college reunion and it's like they see The Rock and they're like, damn, you must work out. He's like, oh man, it was easy. I just worked out 6 hours a day for 20 years. So like people like you and me, right? We did the 10,000 hours of graft to go out there and do the reps, and repetition is the mother of skill. So I would say like as you go through repetitions, as you get in the arena, as you show up over and over again, feel the fear, do it anyway, push out of your comfort zone, you get more and more conscious competence and unconscious competence, right? And so my confidence came from just, thousands of hours of rejection on the phone. And in building consultancies and training teams and consultants, just I had tons of failures when I'm used to doing that. So I think the book will kind of be a North Star or a compass. If you're already in a situation where you kind of crawl, walk, run, where you walk, run, or run, fly, it'll help you, I think, find the next gear and see the next mountain you have to climb. But yeah, obviously you should hire someone like Jeff or myself to help push you out of the airplane. I mean, it's easy to skydive, right? Just go jump out of a plane. Like some people can do that, but most people are strapped to another person on the first jump because there's just no way they're going to get out of the comfort zone?
It's it's tougher to do than they make it look, the ones who have done it 1,000 times, right? You kind
Yeah.
of alluded to this earlier, taking some of the wind out of my sails, here. But if there was, I actually planned to ask this question. If there was a warning label that came with your book, what would it say?
Well, I think may you never be the same. I mean, one of the things that Carol Dweck talked about is whether you have a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. And it's sometimes hard for people to look at themselves, is your brand high or low frame? Now, it's not fixed, right? Because you can have three Aston Martin dealerships and have a high frame. You could also own dollar stores, a whole chain, and maybe be richer, right? So, like, money doesn't quite work that way. It's not, this is not a book about status or the 1% in elitism. It's the 1% of excellence, because excellence is possible at any hierarchical level, right? Like the Dalai Lama has a super high frame in one context where he's like, you know, some type of politician might have a very low frame because of corruption, that type of thing, right? So there's always a place to reflect and think, am I coming off as strong as possible in this interaction? Am I putting myself out there in a high frame way? One of the exercises just say, is this high frame? How do I raise the frame? Am I owning the frame? How do I get the frame back in place? Like without even defining it, people automatically know what that means. And so I think Oren did a great job in Pitch Anything of like how to just come with a high frame into fundraising. But what we talk about here is sort of the breathing before and composure and posture and silence. Just saw a study from Hermosi pulling content where like being silent for an additional 30 seconds once you say an offer
Hmm.
raises the close rate. Did
Yep.
you see that one come around?
I
Really
I remember
interesting.
that years ago. I remember actually pulling this, doing this to a manager of mine. I remember having this conversation. It wasn't too long after I read it, but it was one of those things where after you ask the closing question, shut your mouth, and the next person to talk owns the product. Either you speak up first and it's still yours, or that next person to talk, hopefully your customer says yes, right? And I remember talking to my manager about that just casually, and then I just kept my mouth shut and made direct, somewhat uncomfortable eye contact with him for the next 30 seconds. He says, "Okay, I see what you're doing. I get it. Yeah, 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 yeah." And it was kind of a fun moment, a little levity there. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Like the confidence to be calm, the confidence to be quiet, owning the frame at that point. And I think there's something there too I want to get to here because you mentioned these frame escalations that sometimes go along with egoic escalations. And
Yeah,
sometimes it's important to take a lower frame or what is perceived as a lower frame so that you can ultimately maintain control of the situation and
yeah,
use their own momentum in a jujitsu way, right? Use their
yeah.
own momentum to your advantage. Like, okay, let him walk right into where I expect him to go. So then that gives me the context to teach the lesson I need to teach. That's not something you learn in undergrad.
No, no. So social Aikido or social Tai Chi, yeah, there's these frame breaks. There's these moments where you're bombing a pitch or something is just starting to go badly. And I think most books I've read just talk about self-reflection after you fail, but
Mhm.
we have a whole chapter about how to just regain the composure like in real time and just recenter yourself and pick it up. Because the great salespeople are able to just make a joke. I was watching like Larry Ellison do a talk and his projector broke and he just kept cracking jokes. And he's like sitting there in the Oracle world, like giant meeting with everyone like eyes on him. And he's just chill. Like it's like a duck, like water off
Hmm.
his back.
Hmm.
So that the old model is kind of like the Grant Cardone, real loud energy, gold watch suit. Like that's one frame. If that helps you feel powerful, good. Then you got the Jordan Belfort where the guy's like, third Red Bull, enthusiastic. He's just getting real crazy. That's cool. But you know what? I've heard a lot of soft-spoken people like Ray Dalio is really kind of
Yep.
calm when he talks, and people are transfixed by his books. Just find the one for you. Be yourself. Everyone else is taken. What people signal is they see that you're comfortable in your own skin. It's sort of the Maslow hierarchy. They see that you're independent from the good opinion of other people. Um, Right. Like a lot of the coolest fashions, people look ridiculous, but it becomes cool because they don't care. They just do something cool. And then it's like your Pharrell Williams, right? Like
Right.
that kind of thing. So there's a sort of like subtle art of not giving an F to all of this. The James
Yeah.
Dean, it's just sort of the rebel. Because we live in this conformist society where there's sort of the sheeple and the leaders. So it's kind of about leadership too in the book. I mean, the people I deal with, they really badly want to break through their income ceiling. And they're doing everything. They're taking every course and cohort, and they're just working on this external world. Close your eyes. The problem is within. What do you think of yourself?
Mm.
What do you believe? Like if you're a chain smoker, this is from Atomic Habits, right? And you're gonna work with a coach, and I'm just gonna stay on you and make sure you don't smoke for 90 days. Like it's just a shotgun aimed at you or something, a lock on you won't smoke. And then I'll leave, and within 2 days you'll be smoking again. Because you're like, I'm a chain smoker. So it's like you have to make a decision that you're a millionaire. That's quite uncomfortable. And then, art will imitate life and life will imitate art. So I guess I would ask you that question in reverse. As you became more successful in sales as a consultant, did you feel that frame increase? And was it the reasons that I brought up, or was it different reasons?
Great question. I think I have felt the frame increase because of the different companies I've been exposed to, the different comments that I've gotten. I think I've been, in some ways, mindful enough to receive some compliments, which helped me to level up in that way. In other ways, I was talking with someone earlier today. I think I deny a lot of compliments, and that I should probably pay attention to, in those ways. And so there's the inner battle. But what you mentioned before about therapy. I've grown tremendously over the last year and a half because I finally have shut certain things off, certain signals in my brain, and been more accepting to those quiet moments. And really, instead of fighting what those quiet moments, which is Latin for the truth, are trying to tell me, right? Listening to what I am receiving now as the truth instead of denying it. And that's where, I always say the truth is undefeated. It's been said forever that the truth will set you free. You don't really know what that means. You can nod and smile and say, "Oh, yeah, yeah, of course." What I've recognized is over the last probably 14 or 15 months, especially, um, seeing things again almost for the first time that I had acknowledged for years. And
Hmm.
just finally understanding what some of those deeper lessons mean. And I think that's, if this is, if you're breaking this down into 12 chapters, these 10 laws, I think you're giving people templates for how to understand things from a more global perspective, from a wider point of view, so they can start to receive those lessons. And maybe those things they've been saying for years that have meant one thing will finally mean what they're supposed to mean to them. And I think that's powerful. That's personal growth. And personal growth is tied to professional growth. And 99.9% of times, except for those few where you're just holding the winning Powerball ticket, sometimes literally and figuratively, you have to be the kind of person that stands in those results if you're going to sustain them.
It's true, right? I mean, I always think about like the ascended masters and the gentle giants because I think, the most powerful force in the world is love and service of other people. So if you read like, Think and Grow Rich or The Science of Getting Rich, you're giving more in use value than cash value. The cool stuff about what we do is we empower salespeople. They then go help a lot of other people transacting their products and services. There's this great ripple effect. So
Hmm.
we generate tens of millions of dollars to make millions, and that's the beautiful equation. So I think like what helped me become more successful in business was really letting go of resentments, really loving myself, being more gentle to myself and my internal psychology, and then just really oriented around service and powerfully serving my clientele, whether they pay me or not. And so, yeah, and that really came from The Go Giver, and Ian Koniak pointed me at that book and a lot of other cool stuff that I've read and written about.
Hmm.
The frame doesn't get really woo-woo or spiritual. In this case, it's more like Stoicism or Marcus Aurelius. There's a chapter at the end. I think what's cool is the book gets better and better towards the last chapter. We didn't do that thing where it's like a great insight in the beginning and then just regurgitates. There's a cool chapter 10, and then, when the guy comes in on a helicopter, goes to Johnny's desk, sits in his desk, puts his feet on the desk, and tells him he's gonna give him $2 million less. Johnny's like, "Nope, get out of my office." That type of thing. And we have this like two billionaires sitting around who are, old, talking about what they did. And then the book ends with sort of a letter to ourselves after we're dead, like the legacy. So are you living from your legacy? And, life is so short. A lot of us are living that through our children, through our works, through the books we write, through the techniques we put out. It's just been a joy to read it. I got teary-eyed when I finally finished the thing. I've read the thing 10 times myself. I find myself literally with a hard copy rereading it. The only book I had like that was called Discipline Equals Freedom by Jocko Willink.
Hmm.
It was like this badass field manual, and it was like haiku, like this like hardcore soldier haiku, and I would read it at 3 a.m. and just go like work out and stuff. So anyway, yeah, it's been a pleasure to have this, short chat. Thank you so much for supporting, and
Sure. But
great to be here.
before I lose the pleasure of your company, where can people find it?
Yeah, so if you just go to Amazon in your country and just put The Frame, Justin Michael, or Johnny Stager, it'll come up because some people are in Canada or in Europe, wherever you are, and always Amazon resolves to different countries. So type in The Frame, Justin Michael. You can follow me on LinkedIn. And yeah, it's that easy. You'll see it. Very exciting.
Excellent. Excellent. Thanks a lot, Justin.
Thanks, Jeff. Great to see you, man.